what's going on here. Hold on one
Okay, I'll
second.
start the meeting informally. So I'll just say this is the Common Council Ordinance Regular Committee. It's October 17th. The time is 7:03, and we are just waiting for some of our other committee members to join. So it'd be
Hold
just
on one second. I gotta start the thing on YouTube.
Oh, so none of that was happening.
You gotta wait. Let's see. I gotta pick Larry. Hold on. We gotta give like a.
I'll see if I can find my invite and send it to Camacho.
And also
Wait.
Brian Meek, he's having trouble getting in. All right, it's live streaming, but we have to wait like 10-15 seconds. And it hasn't completely set up yet.
Okay. Do you want me to do my little gig, or do you want to send him the invitation?
Hold on one second. Let's give it
I can send it to Camacho now if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. And to Meek,
Okay. I don't know if I have
if you
this.
wouldn't mind. And we're expecting Taisha and people like that too. So
yeah, I'm resending the link again to everybody. Let me just take a look. I mean, I'm trying to set up the thing on live, so.
I just sent it to Meek and Camacho.
okay, but
All right, now we have 10 participants, so hold on.
okay, good.
We have 6 attendees. There's Brian Meek. I'm going to allow him to. There's Brian. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Here, we're gonna unmute Brian. There's Taisha. I'm going to allow her to talk. I'm going to mute her. There we go.
This
There's
doesn't
Ed.
look like a panelist view.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we're having a little.
I don't need the panelist view if you can hear me.
I can hear you, Brian. So I got Brian. I got Taisha. I got Jess. Allow
Great.
Jess to talk. Nicole, I see.
Yep, we could let
I-
Nicole.
I have a 203-858-1537. I'm going to allow to talk just for a moment to see who it is.
Okay. Josh says he's coming late.
The telephone number 20, who is this on the telephone?
Hi, this is Diane Lauricella calling in to just make comment during public comment.
Okay, thank you, Diane. I'm going to mute you for now. Thank you.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that link seems to only have me as a participant, not a panelist.
Yeah, I don't know
The
why
one
that
just
did that.
sat.
All right, Lisa, we now have, we do not have enough. We only have 3 of you right now. We have Ed. Where's Ed? Is Ed here?
It's not here yet.
No, wait, Ed's here. Hold on. I just gotta allow him to
Okay,
talk.
good. There's Ed. Okay, good.
There's Ed. I'm gonna mute Ed. So Ed's here. So now we have 4. So now you can do your introduction.
Okay, I'm going to do that in 1 second. I think, Brian, what happened was that Irene's on vacation. Maybe there's a vacation and somebody just sent out the link in a different format this time. So I apologize for any efforts.
It's not a big deal. If you want to promote me to a panelist from the Zoom
do
administrator, that's
that.
fine.
If we can-
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Hold on.
Let's put Brian, Taisha.
Promote to panelists. There it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Brian,
I got it.
You got it? Okay, good. Let me just gonna do Taisha and
So-
Ed.
You have me as a panelist as well, and as a participant, not a panelist.
Yeah, we
Oh,
need-
join as a panelist.
Yeah, we would definitely need you, but when we get to this ad hoc housing, it's just going to be a lot easier. And Jess as well.
Yep, I just promoted Jess and Taisha as well. Okay, so I think everyone's there that needs to be there now, because the other 2 are Nicole and Diane. And Nicole's been joining concerning affordable housing, and Diane wants to make comments.
Yeah, and Nicole can be put as a panelist as well, because she's a council member and she may well be commenting on the.
No, this is Nicole Eady, not Nicole Ayers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, gotcha.
Different Nicole. Yep.
Different Nicole. Alrighty, I'm going to start right now then. So it's October 17th. Today is the Common Council Ordinance Committee regular meeting. We are starting the meeting a little late at 7:07. At this time, Jim Freyer, Brian Meek, Ed Camacho has joined us. And we expect to have Josh Goldstein and Nora Ninjelski-Eitner join us at a later date. And Brian will note that in the minutes when they arrive. So the first order of business is that you'll see that we have public hearing listed, but as it turns out, the newspaper for the first time in seemingly our history got the notice wrong. So we are not going to have a public hearing on the affordable housing ordinance. We'll discuss that at the end of the meeting. I'm going to ask for a change of order of our business to discuss that. But at this time, what I will do is open public comment. So if there's anyone who'd like to make public comment on any of our agenda items today, if they would raise their hands and Brian could let them speak.
Okay, so we're going to allow Diane Lauricella to speak first. Diane, you can unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Good evening, Chairwoman Shanahan. For the record, my name is Diane Lauricella, 21 Little Fox Lane in Norwalk. Tonight, I just wanted to briefly mention two items that are on the agenda. The first is in your minutes that you will eventually approve. I just wanted to clarify for the record, when I was discussing the affordable housing ordinance, I had asked whether accessory dwelling units, both attached and detached, if they were considered qualified to be funded through the account that this committee is creating or thinking of creating. And in the minutes, it says attached dwelling units. I think that's a typo. It might, of course, because as we all know, it's a very complicated situation, but I just wanted to make sure that the record shows that I intended both attached and detached ADUs or accessory dwelling units. And I will speak to that when and if you do decide to have a public hearing in the future. My second item quickly is your relationship to Chapter 9, the sale of city property. What I felt based upon some most recent requests for selling city property over the last year is I do believe it is important to have an assessment of the value of the property. Now, some members of the staff had mentioned, it's on the record, where they felt one of the more recent in Rowayton parcels was wetlands and it was not worth anything. Many of us on this call and many environmental advocates know that wetlands are valuable. Well, the thing is that especially when someone is adding a quarter acre of property to their property, it could very much enhance the value of their land. So I think it's only fair that we have a valuation through proper authorities. I'm having a senior moment as to what that word is supposed to be, but an assessment of the true market value of that land would be in order. And I would like to see that added to this proposed amendment to the ordinance, because I think without it, we will continue we will undervalue valuable property that is owned by the people of the city. So thank you very much. I ask that you consider adding this as a caveat, a standard, or a talking point, assessment of the true value of the parcel that is being reviewed for sale. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Diane.
Diane, are you trying to say fair market value? Is that the phrase you're searching for? Well, we might have closed her on. Okay.
No,
sure.
she's there.
Madam Chairwoman, the computer voice on Zoom was blocked what you asked me. Could you please repeat?
Yes. Is the phrase you're looking for fair market value?
Yes.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
there's an action step of hiring or having someone evaluate the fair market value. Maybe
Appraise-
that's
Ma'am.
implied, but
Perhaps appraise.
appraisal is fine, whatever your committee decides.
All right. Thank you very much just for that clarification. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Mr. Meek, are you wanting to make a response to?
Oh, yeah, I was just looking for clarification. I too am mystified. For example, when we bought Hatch and Bailey, we paid fair market value, but since we're a public entity selling it, there's no conveyance tax added to
Well,
the
let's
fair
talk-
market value.
Yeah, so let's talk about it that with Taisha in proper order of the agenda. She
Okay.
can lay that out,
I-
I think, rather
didn't
than
know-
hesitate now. Yeah,
M-
this is
Miss
a,
Lauricella came off a little inaudible. I didn't know if she was looking at the conveyance taxes we're losing on these as well.
no,
Um,
I don't think that was her comment. All right,
so
let's see if there's other public comment at this time, and then we'll close public comment if there's no one
hold
else.
on, Nora's here. It's 7:13 and it looks like Nora's now in. Hold on.
Alrighty, good.
No, wait, she left.
All right.
So-
Did you, is the other person, the other Nicole, is she wanting to make a comment, or are we?
No,
Done.
Nicole Edie did not raise her hand.
Okay, so I will close public comment at this time.
Right, and Nora is trying to get in, but I think she's having the same issues that everyone else had. So when she comes back, I will let her in and promote her to panelist.
All right, maybe somebody could send her a note that she just has to go in the regular Ed, would you mind sending her a text just telling her?
Wait, she's back. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm going to promote her right now.
Sorry, everybody, that's so strange tonight. It's not even Halloween
right.
yet.
Nora's here at 7:14 p.m.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Sorry about that. I thought I must have clicked the wrong link.
You didn't. Everybody's having trouble tonight for some reason. All right, so we are just closing the public comment period. At this time, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes. Ms. Lauricella made one suggested change, which I think is appropriate, which is they aren't attached dwellings, it's ADUs. So if we would like to, if somebody would make a motion to accept the minutes with that change, that would be helpful.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor of accepting the minutes with that single change? All in favor? Nora, were you there? You were there, right? At that meeting? We may have lost Nora.
Yes, no, my apologies. I was, and I'm voting in the affirmative. Thank you.
Okay, great. And I assume, Mr. Meek, you weren't there, so you are going to.
I'm
abstain.
abstaining. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay. So now I would ask for an motion. We're going to change the order of our business this evening just for courtesy to Taisha Toms, who was here to speak about the procedure for sale. I will say that discuss the Chapter 58A blight prevention. We really don't have any new to report about that. So I think we'll skip over that item. What I'd like to do then is move the discuss and vote, and we're not going to vote. We're just going to discuss section 9.3, which is the procedure for city, the sale of city property. Taisha is going to just give us an overall view of this topic. We are not looking at changes to the ordinance tonight that we're going to be voting on. This is just for introductory purposes, and we'll have a draft at our next meeting. And then the last item of business today will then be the discuss the affordable housing ordinance. So if you wouldn't mind, Taisha, and opening up this topic, that would be helpful. Oh, wait, first I need the motion though. I need a motion to go out of order. Sorry.
So moved.
So moved.
Alrighty, thank you. All in favor of moving the agenda items? I see 4 votes. Mr. Meek, are you okay with us?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
please
so that's-
change.
Thank you. So that is unanimous. All right, now we are moving to discuss section 9-3, procedure for the sale of city property.
Good evening.
Thank
Thank you. So the purpose of this particular change is to remove personal property from the ordinance because currently there's a requirement for a public hearing when the city sells personal property. This will not affect conveyances of real property. And it's with regards to an appraisal. I'm almost certain that the city gets an appraisal for anything that it sells. I know that they get boats appraised when they sell them personal property. Those things are appraised, but as far as real property, we would absolutely get an appraisal because that's how you establish the value. It's established through an appraisal. So this particular change, we're making, I'm recommending 2 changes. One is to remove personal property, and the other one is to remove reasonable from the notice requirement and to use the notice requirement of Connecticut General Statutes 7-163E. And essentially that is the state statute that requires a public hearing for the sale, lease, or transfer of any property owned by a municipality. So this is a bit redundant in the sense that there's already a state statute that requires this, but the difference is we were also requiring a public hearing for personal property. So the way personal property has been handled for the most part, and this issue was raised because both police and fire were selling boats. And I believe the fire boat was very expensive. I can't recall, but it was around 600,000, I think was the value. And so we did have a public hearing for that. No one attended. But we just feel that this is adding an additional step to something that the city does pretty regularly for things like, our fleet of vehicles, should they become surplus property, furniture. And we don't think that it's necessary to have a public hearing to sell a desk, So we do post all of the surplus property on a public website called publicsurplus.com. And it's put out to bid. The starting bid is typically the appraised value. And then the public gets a deadline to bid on it. And so it's going to, you're getting the best offer, and it's in the fair market where that's being determined, and it's competitive. So it meets all of the standards for public procurement. But it doesn't require a public hearing in that sense. We wouldn't want to have a public hearing for those things.
So basically, these sales have been happening kind of in lieu. I mean, there haven't been public hearings, so we really haven't been following the ordinance. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes. The ordinance hasn't been followed. The way that I was alerted to that was because I was asked for an opinion about the sale of the boats. And when I told our purchasing agent that she needed to have a public hearing, and she thought that that was for real property, and then, taking a closer look at the statute, we realized that it is it's indeed for personal property. So we did have hearings for those things, but to somewhat rectify past practice or current practice to some degree, we'd like to change the ordinance so people are compliant.
Is there some thought that maybe a certain piece of personal property of a certain value should have a public hearing, like a boat for 600,000 versus a desk for $20?
I wouldn't be opposed to establishing a value. I think that's fair. Yeah, because as long as it's not a value that, for instance, I wouldn't pick something so low that you would capture cars, right? Because we sell a lot of vehicles. So it should be a substantial value, like a fire truck, that's going to be a couple $1 million. So yeah, you would want a public hearing for something like that. But or a police boat for 600,000 or fire boat for 600,000, but a car for 50,000 or 40,000, I'm not sure. We want to have a public hearing for that, but I'll leave that to you all to decide.
Other committee comments before we kind of move forward? This is just an introductory, just a first blush. Ms. Najelski-Eitner.
Well, before that, I just want to put for the record that Josh Goldstein appeared somewhere between 7:17 and 7:18 to the hearing.
That's what I had marked too. Thank you. Hi, Josh. All right, Nora, do you have a thought or comment?
I do. I guess I'm trying to sort out what the purpose of a public hearing for the sale of property is. Is the hearing intended to elucidate questions as to why we are selling the property, or is it intended to elucidate questions as to whether the appraisal is in fact the correct appraisal value? Just walk me through what the value of a public hearing is supposed to be in this context, because I think that might help better understand what, if any, level we should set for review, et cetera. And thank you.
So, and this, I think the reason for the public hearing will be different depending on the people who are attending, right? So I can't really guess why the public would want to be involved, but so to some degree, I think it's for if people have objections to the value established, that would be, in my opinion, something that you would raise at a public hearing, because the public hearing has to take place before a final decision. So as with any public hearing, when the public weighs in, it may influence the outcome. And so it's just to give the public an opportunity to participate in the process on real property in particular.
Mr. Meek? I think that you're muted, sir.
Thank you. Well, while we're tinkering with this section of the code, it concerns me that I'm not suggesting these aren't arm's length transactions, but selling property, for example, Hatch and Bailey, if Hatch and Bailey had sold that at fair market value to another party, it would be subject to about 200,000 in conveyance tax. How are we reasonably assured as taxpayers that that money's not factored out of the selling price when it comes to the city buying it, right? So Hatch and Bailey's saving $175,000 by selling us this property because they're not selling it to a private party. And, you know, I only saw the details about the sale saying that it was at fair market value, but fair market value on that property really means something different when you don't have to pay the conveyance tax. I don't know if it circumvents section 7 of the state code or the other codes, but it feels like we're leaving money on the table here. I
So-
appreciate any comments or feedback on that.
I don't have the exact statute, but the conveyance tax exemption is statutory, right? So there's a particular code for it on the form. Typically, the seller pays the conveyance tax. So when the city is selling a property, we wouldn't pay conveyance tax. We would be exempt under that exemption. I am not aware as to whether or not that applies when the city is purchasing from a private
They're
private
exempt.
seller.
They're
So
exempt.
They did.
They're
I'm sorry?
exempt. They're
Okay.
exempt from paying what would have been $175,000 in taxes
Well,
had
that-
they sold to
that's
a
a state
private
statute.
property.
Well, then
Yeah.
it's from the state statute. The exemptions to conveyance tax are statutory.
So it brings into question, what is fair market value? Is fair market value what a government can sell it for or what a private party can sell it for? I believe we left a lot of money on the table in this one specific example. Taking at face value an arm's length transaction of fair market value. Was that fair market value for the city or was that fair market value based on what they could sell it to an outside party for?
But this is about us selling property. This isn't about us buying property, this ordinance.
It-
I'm
that-
confused.
You open the door on the ordinance. We have no protections in here from a seller asserting that fair market value to the city is the same as fair market value to a private property. It's
Okay.
only $175,000 here times 30 other transactions down the road. Feels like we're being left short here.
My impression is that, and I'm just, just my impression, but my impression is that fair market value is fair market value. And whatever the collateral consequences of the sale are, in this case, the waiver of the transfer tax is collateral to the issue of what is fair market value.
And we benefit from it because we're not paying conveyance tax, so we're not losing the conveyance. You're not paying the conveyance tax.
It's the other way, Lisa, that the seller is not paying convenience tax because they're selling to us.
But
But
we're,
that doesn't increase the value of the property.
Yeah.
The property has the value it has.
I didn't see an appraisal saying that the value is this if we sell to a private party versus the city. I just saw a
That's-
value that said, this is what it's worth. That's what we paid.
But the conveyance tax wouldn't change the value of the property. Because
$175,000 wouldn't make a difference.
I get practically it does, but as far as a valuation on an appraisal, that is determined by the comps, and comps are paying conveyance tax.
Okay, so we're
presumably,
throwing out
but we're not
$175,000. That's what
We
I
don't
wanted to hear.
typically factor in transfer cost into the value of the property. That's just a transaction cost, right? Like a broker's fee. You would not add that to the value.
When
of the
money is free,
property.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Could I just ask a question? I don't understand where we're leaving the money on the table. if we don't pay any compliance,
Conveyance tax.
conveyance tax, where are we leaving? I mean, if it's statute, if it's a state statute that we don't pay that, how do we would not pay it. We would never pay it. So why are we leaving it on the table?
The city doesn't pay it, the seller pays it. In this example I'm bringing up, thanks, Jim, Hatch and Bailey, had they sold that property to a private party, they would have to fork over a check to the town clerk for $175,000.
Right,
They did not have to do that. Did
right.
they drop their price from fair market value of the assessment that we paid for by $175,000? I see no evidence of that.
Right. Maybe they, you know, they could have sold it to somebody else too at $250,000 higher and then
You're-
paid the
you're-
170.
you're-
Yes,
You're
I know.
absolutely correct, but would they have on the appraisal? I don't know. Is there anything in here that protects us from that? I don't see it.
Well,
But this
actually,
is
that
sales.
was,
Okay, Taisha, can you put up the ordinance that we're talking about? Because it's talking about the city selling property. It's not about the city buying property. It's just out of the scope of what our discussion is, I believe.
That's fair, Chair. I've made my point, sorry.
Procedure for the sale of city property. I mean, I could see that you have an issue with something else, but that's not in the scope of this discussion.
You can open up the ordinance book to anything you want. I thought maybe we would want to have fair market value actually represented, what it means. Do we get an appraisal from a seller that represents what it would be for selling to the city versus selling to a private property based on the fact that they don't have to pay taxes when they sell it to us? If this isn't in the same area, maybe I'm just confused.
Yeah, I don't believe that this is in the realm of what we're talking about, which is a procedure for the sale of city property. You're talking about the procedure for selling property to the city, which is not in the scope of this discussion.
That's a fair point. It's not in the scope of this discussion. Maybe it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, we could bring it up in another, if you have a concern about this and it's in a different ordinance, I always encourage my committee members to bring these types of issues to the chair, and I'd be happy to have a discussion about that another night.
Thank you, Lisa.
Sure, you got it. Any other comments about, Mr.
yes, I
Frick?
did. We talked about the odds and ends that go on the publicservice.com, publicsurplus.com site. Do those, that's kind of like you bid on whatever the object that we're going to sell. Is that how it works?
Yes,
Is there a bottom line that we put in it? Is there a
yes.
threshold that, how do you get to that?
The
How is that
starting bid
determined?
is the appraised value. So bids start at the appraised value.
So that's the minimum bid and it has to go from there.
So if there was a fire truck on there and somebody bid $50,000 and it's worth 12 million, it could go for considerably less than 12 million.
No, so their bid probably would not be accepted, but I'm not certain about that.
Okay, so there
Because
is,
there is a starting number.
okay, that's what I was getting.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we come up with that starting number? How would
Say
we
that
come
one
up
more
with this-
time?
How does the city come up with a starting number to go on that publicsurplus.com?
An
site?
appraisal.
Okay, so there's an
Doing a-
appraisal that's gotten, and then that's what, that appraisal is the baseline in which we're gonna seek bids.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
All right, good. So this is just an introduction to the fact that we're looking at this and wanted to get impressions from the committee about things that we ought to include in it. It sounds like one of the things that we're interested in is perhaps a place like a minimum value or a minimum value that goes to public hearing. That might be something more than a car, but something along those lines, right, Tisha, like as we spoke about?
Yes.
What value would you suggest? You suggested a fire truck of $2 million, but is there something between that 5,000 and 2 million that you would suggest as a sort of a cutoff?
I think 100,000 is fair.
Okay. And what's an example of something that would cost 100,000 that would sell at $100,000, for instance?
Well, the boats were over, well, the police boat was under 100,000, but the fire boat was over 100,000.
And do you think the police boat should have gone up for public comment? Or not?
It did, because we followed the ordinance, but I'm not sure that it was worth the time, but no one attended. So I can't say that it, that it was a complete waste. I guess it's not, no harm, no foul, right? So if you put
Yeah.
it out there,
I mean, if we put a value on something with the cost of inflation, eventually it's gonna it'll be swallowed up by whatever so if we put a value on it, we might. Well, I guess we can revisit this every year anyway, but some sort of increase or whatever. But
I wouldn't
I-
recommend,
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
no, it won't. Sorry.
I wouldn't recommend putting the value in the ordinance for that exact reason, because values change. And it's always very interesting when I'm reading ordinances and they're talking about things that are like $10 and it's just not relevant anymore. You might want to set the tone for that in the purchasing guidelines. I know those are being updated. And so maybe there's a section in there, so it'll be pursuant to something that's a bit more flexible. And then establish that in a different document as opposed to the ordinance.
That would be helpful if you could kind of construct that. Nora Najowski-Eitner had her hand up next.
Just very briefly to follow on Ed's point, I was just going to agree and say that although I hear Taisha's recommendation, Ms. Tom's recommendation regarding connecting it to some guidance documents, I was also just going to say, I think we should always, chain to this, the consumer price index or some sort of increase anytime we're going to put a number in for that same reason. So either approach. Thank you. And 100,000 might still be a little low, honestly, for a public hearing. I think the whole idea is this should sort of be for things that are extraordinary, or that there would be some reason that this would be really out of the normal course of business that we'd be doing it. But again, I think it would be helpful, Ms. Toms, when you come back on this, to have some sense of kind of where the break point is between sort of ordinary course stuff and stuff that is more unusual or might be warranting a little bit of extra attention.
Okay.
Yeah,
And also, I guess, so one other thing too is to wonder if, again, rather than having it go to full public hearing, could it be like on a finance committee agenda for the council, like we do with a number of other expenses, where we just get a report of it unless it exceeds some certain amount, in which case there is discussion of it and a vote on it at the finance committee. That might again be some way of finding some middle ground between making sure there is oversight and not spending an inordinate amount of time of staff dealing with something that is not really of serious public interest. Just another thought to toss out.
Yeah, I think those are all like great ideas. And I had one other thought about that, just to give us some context, maybe just give us a small report of, what did we sell in the last 2 years and kind of what price points were, and just have a sense of, where things ended up. If it's 4 things a year, that's over 100,000, that gives us an indication that's not a big deal. If there's 10, it's more interesting. Mr. Meek, you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would support some thresholds of dollar valuation, but more in line of, in the event where you only had a single bid and combination of dollars. So if we're selling a $600,000 boat, we only get one bid and it's for like 100,000. Maybe then you have a public hearing still. Just a thought. Thanks.
Great.
I have a question.
All right, so Ms. Toms, you got a lot of feedback.
Ed's got a question, Lisa.
Oh, I'm
My-
sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
see your.
My impression from what Ms. Tom said was that the public hearing is before the item goes up for sale, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So I think Councilman Meek suggested that there be a public hearing after a bid has been placed on something. So that would be after. So there'd be 2 public hearings.
Well, with some threshold, and only if it's a single bid. I mean, if
Okay.
it's with thresholds within
Okay.
reason. I don't know what reason is.
I got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Great. Any other thoughts before we let Taisha leave? Great. All right. Well, I'll give you a call next week and we can talk about, sort of doing a general outline on some of these ideas that came up.
Thank you,
Sure.
Taisha.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
this evening and waiting for a little bit. All right, so our last item of business is the discuss and vote on resending the affordable housing ordinance to public hearing. So just to make the record clear, what basically happened was we sent our notice of public hearing to the newspaper and they didn't publish. Doesn't happen very often. So what we're doing now is it gave us a chance to take a second look at the affordable housing, and we did have some cleanup that we thought we wanted to do. So we thought we would take another look at it this evening, go through it with everybody, and then we can vote again to take it to public hearing. We would have a special meeting for this so that we could handle it in this council. So we'd have a quick special ordinance meeting on October 30th, if all goes well this evening. So Brian, do you want to pull up the draft and we can, we'll have Brian go through the small changes that we were making to clean some things up.
Sure. So
The only one major issue that we're going to cover tonight.
so the first thing is that we just switched throughout the ordinance. Anytime it mentioned Norwalk, we switched Norwalk to city, just so it's consistent with other ordinances. You can see that in the preamble in section 1-1. You can see that a couple times. And please interrupt or just raise a hand or something. Interrupt me just because I have it on share screen, so I can't see everybody. Based on the fact that we're talking about majority vote and it's capitalized within the ordinance, we thought it was a good idea to put in a definition of what majority vote means. So you can see that in the definitions, this is just an additional definition that defines majority vote as the affirmative vote of at least a majority of the members of the Common Council present and voting at a duly held meeting of the Common Council at which a quorum is present.
And
Yep.
Mr. Gandel, just to make sure that people are aware, so that is the definition from the charter revision, correct?
Correct.
So our
Correct.
hope is that this will become the sort of standard that is used
Correct.
consistently going forward.
And just so everyone is aware, the goal, and we strive to this, we're not reaching it. The goal is to make our ordinances as similar as possible. And so this is perhaps one way that we can do that, among other ways, which you might see within the changes that were made. In qualified expenditures, you can see that we removed utilities. We're still talking about physical acts of construction, rehabilitation, improvement, maintenance, and repair, or to buildings or structures. There was no change to add in any kind of soft costs, but these included labor and materials. Utilities are kind of a vague term, so we removed it. If anyone has a comment or thought about that, please go ahead, but it's pretty clear from the definition that we're taught that qualified expenditures are physical acts of building, not of soft costs like designs or something like that. Okay.
Good to go.
All right. So in 1.4a, this talks about the Affordable Housing Account Committee. And again, you can see that we switched it to majority vote, which we discussed above as a defined term. Really, the big change here was discussing the membership, and nothing except the only change that was really made was to identify to people that the members who were appointed by the mayor are the ones who serve terms. Two common council members that would be on this committee, their time would end when their time on the common council ended. Planning and zoning director, for example, chief of community services, or their designees. If, for example, Steve Kleppen was no longer PNC director, then it would be the new person. Steve wouldn't continue on in that role. The members who are appointed by the mayor and they're identified as somebody who's an owner of affordable housing, and at least one of them has to be a resident in an affordable housing. Those people are appointed by the mayor, and at least for their initial terms, when this committee is formed, they will serve staggered terms so we don't have everyone coming at the same time. And as you can see, one would serve until June of 24, June of 25, and June of 26. And then after those initial terms, they would serve on 3-year terms after that, so that everyone would be staggered and we wouldn't have to fill multiple seats at once. That is the only change that was made. It was to clean up the language and explain that only those members are serving on staggered terms. All the other ones serve either as their employment allows or as they're voted onto the Common Council.
And this is really in conformity with what we've done in other ordinances. So we try to use the same language, and this is really what that changes to conform them.
And just to confirm again, this was exactly what it was intended to do. We merely changed the language to use the same language we used in other ordinances to achieve the same purpose.
And
Exactly.
you can see that in the crossed out language below. It talks about all committee members shall serve for 4 years. So instead we switched it to 3 years, and then we tried to stagger it. And again, in terms of trying to be consistent, we tried to, I think we looked to the bike walk ordinance to try and figure out those staggered terms, because that was one that was recently created where we had to stagger terms so everyone wasn't leaving at the same time.
Good to go. Alrighty.
Okay. Again, you can see in 1.5 there, in 1.4C, you can see that we just removed inefficiency. It's still common council shall have the power to remove a committee member for neglect of duty, malfeasance, investigation, notice, or public hearing. We just removed inefficiency. It was kind of vague. Again, if anyone feels strongly about that, please let me know.
And Brian, again, just to confirm, that aligns with what we have done in charter revision, in the proposed charter revision draft in terms of reasons that a member could be removed from a commission, correct?
That's my understanding, yes. In 1.5, you can see that just switching from Norwalk to city. So again, what we discussed earlier. You'll see a lot of writing in 1.6 A and B. We're going to come back to that. We're going to skip over that because there are some simpler changes that we can get through quicker. In 1.6 D, you can see that there was a typo. That was my mistake. So I just switched it to qualified instead of the improper way that I spelled qualified before. Again, in 1.8, all you see is change from Norwalk to city. And in 1.7, you can see that there's a change that just that the committee shall on an annual basis prepare and deliver an annual report about the affordable housing account. We switched it from January just to on an annual basis. January, there didn't seem to be a reason for January, so we just thought on an annual basis, and it's shall, so they have to prepare one, and it's just a matter of the common council following up with the committee if they haven't done it in a timely fashion. Does anybody any comments about that? Okay. So 1.6 is about expenditures, and it's really 1.6 A and 1.6 B where changes were made, proposed changes were made. And basically what this is describing is the planning and zoning director preparing application criteria for people to apply to request, funds from these accounts for expenditures to be made. So they have to prepare these application criteria for everyone to follow when they want to try and get these expenditures. And basically what was changed was we said that there was, and this wasn't really changed, that there's a 30-day public comment and hearing period that this Affordable Housing Committee shall vote on the application criteria. So people are going to get a chance to comment and provide ideas to the committee, and then they're going to vote on the application criteria. And this is where the change is proposed. If the application criteria is approved by the committee, it shall be forwarded to the common council, which shall then approve or amend by majority vote the application criteria within 30 days after such referral. So the public gets to comment, the Affordable Housing Committee gets to listen to it and then make their proposed changes, if any. And then it goes to common council for final approval, and the common council has 30 days to make any changes, if any. And the application criteria as approved by the council will become effective immediately thereafter. After the common council approves the application criteria, it shall be published on the city website. So the only change here that was made from the prior draft was that we're making it so that there's a public, the only changes is that the common council is going to have to bless or amend this application criteria after the public and the committee discuss and then vote on it. So the common council gets a say.
And the reason why we did that was because there really wasn't a mechanism to send it to council. There was the way it was written was just a little unclear. We didn't really know how it should be sent to council. So we decided just to make it clearer by saying that it's forwarded to common council and then it moves forward to approval. And then the only other thing we did was we said that it needs to be approved every 3 years by the committee and then again, common council.
Right, so that's the only other change. So again, it's another layer. The common council, which is the elected body, has there's another layer for them to approve or amend the application criteria. I see Nora has her hand raised. Does anyone else have? So let's start with Nora. Go ahead, Nora.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess my question is, I mean, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to discuss this before this meeting, because as you know, I had deliberately structured it not to do this precisely because I thought this was a waste of time to send it to council after it had already been approved by the committee, unless council had a serious concern with it. I'm fine at the end of the day. It's not a huge deal one way or the other, but this process does not have it going to a committee of the council. So are we going to, like, I understand the desire to standardize here, but this gets into conversations we've been having back and forth over various ordinances about sort of how we want to structure when there is a commissioner board that's doing the work. We still want council oversight, but we also don't want to spend a lot. We don't want the board or commission to have to do all the work, spend a lot of time, and then have it sit for long periods of time with the council when the council is not going to make substantial revisions. So is this going directly to the council? And do we have a mechanism for doing that, going directly to council rather than having it go through a committee?
Well, we talked a little bit about that. One thing we thought was, this, we're going to be spending money, right? So ultimately the council has to bless it in some way. And in B, we thought like, oh, we could say in B, like which committee it goes to, or we could just have it go straight to council, like an up and down vote. Like it doesn't have to be 2 months in there. I mean, what were your thoughts about that? We're not uncomfortable with it going directly to council.
I mean, I am fine with that, but is that something, I mean, again, if this whole conversation is about precedent and patterns, is that something that we otherwise do?
Well, we haven't done it before, and but on the other hand, we definitely never have a situation where a committee proposes expenses that get approved without council oversight. So we just felt like we had to put some kind of council overlay on that because it just wouldn't otherwise, then it'd be really out of conformity with what we did in the tree ordinance and what we did in the cannabis ordinance. I mean, we could add a committee if you'd like. I think the whole point is to not slow this down any more than necessary. So I'm fine with that. And it probably is a good pattern that we should consider for other instances where there's been substantive review. And, the whole point is just to have the council have final authority and an ability to check in the event that something went awry down below without slowing things down too much. But I just want to make sure that everyone's okay with that because again, we've been having a lot of back and forth about things after the fact. So I want to be clear what's happening here and whether in fact everyone's okay with that. Other thoughts? Other committee members? Jim, was that like a yes? Oh, Jim, you're speaking, but you're muted.
Yes, that's a would say yes. No, I believe that it's with the makeup of the committee that we have, you could possibly have people that are not council members that could be approving something and it could go through. So I think the step to go to the council to get their full approval is a necessary step. Just ensures that we have good internal controls over our expenses and our disbursements.
Yeah, I feel a layer for council approval is crucial. But I don't feel it necessary to like throw it through a committee and, slow it down that way, Nora. We're just trying to thread the needle. Mr. Meek.
Oh, thanks. Well, notwithstanding my position that government providing more subsidy to housing actually makes it more unaffordable. We're setting ourselves up here for political favorites. It's a body politic that's going to get to hand out this money. And that said, I don't have votes for it. I have more issues with section 1.2. We went past and it looks like we're at the end of this. But if we're not, I'd like to come back to section 1.2.
Sure.
I honestly don't understand why we're setting thresholds here for qualification, and maybe that's the impetus that this is the only qualification. I don't understand why we wouldn't put language in here that protects us from things like house flipping. There's no measure of equity or means testing involved in this. I don't know how that's equitable. You haven't identified income here, what income actually means. Does it include, is it income tax, gross taxable income, net of depreciation allowances for landlords? Somebody wants to throw money into their 401k to get under the 60%. I just don't see how that's equitable. I feel like it's for a lot of gamesmanship. Maybe these things can be fleshed out in later definitions, but why have any definitions of income or income levels without having more protections for the taxpayers on potential loopholes that could be exploited by this? Thank you.
Nora, do you want to address that? Because these definitions are what you all worked on in your committee. And you're muted, Nora.
Yep, sorry about that. Sure, and Mr. Meeks, I had emailed with you about this, I believe, and I hope it went through. So this
it did. Thank you.
Good,
Thank you. It did.
Good. I'm glad, because I appreciate you raising these issues. This definition, really, this ordinance is intended to sort of create the broad framework within which these guidelines could be developed and within which projects could be sort of proposed, evaluated, et cetera. This ordinance definitely does not control at the level of selecting the individuals who would be qualified for this housing. So this is really about setting the target goals for the construction of housing. And so those kind of criteria that you're talking about in terms of evaluating individuals, doing means testing, assets testing, all the very fair concerns you raise, those would all have to be done at the level of administering whatever program placed people in the housing once it was constructed. So part of the whole, conversation the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee had about this ordinance was wanting to focus this money on the actual sort of hard cost of construction. And that will require that there be, whether it be, nonprofit partners or, city programs, but there will be people who will need to administer the lotteries, the placement programs, whatever mechanism will be appropriate to place people in these units once they're built. But all that will be managed through a combination of the guidelines that are developed. So in terms of what the committee is going to use the funds for in any given year, and then whatever program has applied for those funds, whatever their administration is. So, because that all has to happen at a much more granular level than this ordinance could possibly encompass. And I don't think that we could possibly catch in this ordinance all of the various kinds of concerns you're talking about. I do think that something more like the guidance or more like an application level criteria would probably get into more of those kind of requirements for what the expectations would be for evaluating applications. There also, and this has come up quite a lot in affordable housing. It's come up in this committee too. I mean, there are complicated equity questions here, particularly when you get into the home ownership piece, which is something that I think we all would very much like to foster, right? I think there's a lot of deep belief among the committee members in the value of creating more affordable homes that can be owned, but it does create complex equity questions when you think about who is going to get the benefits of that. But if we don't allow, if all of the equity goes back to the city at the end of the day, and I'm using the equity, I recognize that I'm using equity in two different meanings there, but if all of the value of the home, all of the increase in value of the home over time goes back to the city and the homeowner retains none of it, that is more equitable in the sense that it goes to the city to be redistributed to everyone but it also defeats a lot of the value of having homeownership. So there's a lot of complex questions interwoven in this that are going to have to get sorted as projects move forward. And the answers may be very different depending on the project. They may differ year to year. They may differ on depending on the partner for the application. So I think we wanted this ordinance to leave space for those kind of questions to be addressed in the specific nature of the projects proposed. I'm sorry, that was a long answer. I'm very tired, and so I'm not at my most succinct. I apologize.
So, Mr. Meek, before you go forward, Nora, I'd like you to make one other point, really for the clarity of the record. The real reason why this affordable housing ordinance is being written is because we have sums of money that need to be directed. Can you, just for the clarity of the record, explain that part of it so that we all understand, the purpose of writing this in the first place?
Yes. So, and that I think is an important element of this too, because there will be regulations related to planning and zoning that impact this. So the current planning and zoning regulations, and this will continue most likely, or at least it is currently proposed to continue in the proposed revised planning and zoning regulations, require developers to set aside a certain amount of money for the use of the construction of affordable housing in the city of Norwalk, if they don't construct sufficient units on their own, or if they otherwise meet certain criteria. And so this definition also aligns with, although it is slightly more specific than the definitions being used in the planning and zoning regulations. So this also aligns with, although again, there are so we looked at state regulations and state guidance related to affordable housing, federal, and this definition is sort of intended to reflect the definitions that are widely used at the federal, state level and in our current planning and zoning regulations, so that, again, if you're an affordable housing developer and you're trying to blend together state funds and federal funds, and you're going to seek the funds from the Norwalk Affordable Housing Account to sort of be your matching funds or your last mile funds or whatever we're going to describe them as, to sort of help get the project over the finish line, these definitions align with common definitions used by other affordable housing programs, so that hopefully the applicants will be able to fit our funds in with other funds that they're seeking and be able to sort of build the total funding they need out of that package by having everything aligned. So we spend a lot of time talking to planning and zoning and others to try to make sure that these definitions kind of reflected the common points at which affordable housing was measured, the 60% and 80%. Lines are sort of the two most common. And we specifically, as the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee members, wanted to focus on the 60% level because we felt like that was where the need was greatest in the city. And so we really tried to use this definition as a way of making sure that whatever these funds were, they were used for people for whom we believe there is the greatest challenge in finding affordable housing in the city. Sorry, my apologies again, Lisa. I'm really not.
No, I know we've got you on time zones. The last thing I just want to make a point, and then I'll ask Mr. Meek to make his comment, is these funds are already existing, right, Nora? So we had to figure out what we were going to do with these funds that are sitting in an account somewhere. And so that was the impetus for creating this affordable housing account, because we've been accruing funds because of the monies that developers have been putting into this fund, because they may not have built all the affordable housing they were intended to do. So that was the impetus for doing it.
Yep. Yes, correct.
All right. So Mr. Meek.
Thanks.
With that as
Look,
background.
Thank you. Look, the cause is noble, even if it's inflationary, and it's just, if we're going to put any thresholds in here, you haven't really defined what income is. As a practitioner, I can tell you that that definition varies widely. If other people are just doing this, that's great. Maybe we can be a little stronger so we're not held up back on the assessment side and what it means. I just think we could have better protections in here. Even phasing out from 50% of income to 60% of income, so you avoid some of the games that people are playing, and then put something in there like, look, hey, we're going to help you fix up your porch, your house, but you got to live there for another 3 years. You can't flip this to some developer right after we gave you the money. I just feel like this kind of stuff should be in here up front to protect the city. And that's my point. Thanks.
Well, I think there are, Nora, aren't there deed restrictions already with this money? In fact, it's all deed restricted, I thought.
All of these funds are deed restricted, yes.
So it all goes back to the city at this time, under these regulations that we have in the city. So it's all deed restricted, Mr. Meek. It doesn't, none of it goes out.
Right, but that's controlled by the planning and zoning regulations, not by this ordinance. But will see the reference there to the deed restrictions in planning and zoning, because again, whatever ends up being done there would need to be pulled into this.
So at this time, the restrictions that you're concerned about are embedded. All right, any other thoughts or comments that people would like to make before we take a vote to send it to public hearing at this time?
Just one other thing, Lisa, real quick. 16B.
Oh, yeah,
This is, again, it's in brackets, it's proposed. This is also, this is taken pretty much verbatim. Words are changed from the cannabis ordinance. And this again, discusses,
I think this is.
P&Z director with the common council shall solicit funds. And the P&Z director shall forward a summary of the applications based on the application criteria. To the common council, and the common council can deny in whole but not in part those recommendations. That's pretty much taken verbatim from cannabis. But again, that's in brackets, that's new. So for everyone to consider, see if it's something they want.
We felt it was important to make that consistent with what we did in cannabis. And again, Nora, as you know, like we did it up and, like an up and down vote. So we didn't have like people, pull it apart. Again, making it similar. to
Right, I think we made that revision the last time. I thought we had.
Yeah, it might have been somewhere else, but we just wanted, we numbered B. So as you can see, like number 3, the old B was a little different. So we just pulled it over wholesale.
And those are all the proposed changes. Again, the big one for people to take a look at in the future would be 1.4 is the staggered terms. 1.6 A and B was about the application criteria, and the rest of the changes are changes of words here and there, maybe a sentence, and then obviously that's the only differences from the last time we spoke about this at the meeting that I was not at.
So Nora, if you're comfortable with it, I would entertain a motion to send this to public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor of moving into public hearing on a special meeting date of October 30th? All right, that appears to be unanimous. Great. So with that done, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. All in favor? Great. Good. Thank you so much, everybody.
And then Lisa, that would be on October 30th.
October 30th at 7 p.m.
Okay, I'll send out the legal notice.
Yes, legal notice. And then also, we got it this time.
Hopefully we'll get it. Yep. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, team. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.